Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strick and Roll, a special live edition. I'm your host, Shwin, and this is episode 61. I'm joined by first-time guest of the pod. His name is Robert Silverman. You can find him on Twitter at Bob Saetta. That's Bobsaietta. He is a contributor at The Guardian, at Front Office Sports, at The Daily Beast, and he is a former Knicker blogger. Robert, Bobby, how are you doing?
Doing good, Shwin. How are you, man?
Well, I went for a nice jog in the morning, got my mind right.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, my mind right.
Make sure.
Got to focus.
Got to be in peak physical condition to root for the Knicks. Everyone needs to get their cardio in before tonight's game because I don't know about you, Knicks fans, but I'm going to be a tiny little clenched fist of tension for approximately 3 hours tonight.
Yeah. It would be nice if they could.
You got to get your exercise in.
Yeah, it would be nice if they could just kind of like play a normal game, but the odds of that are not high. So,
is there a place I can bet on Knicks not normal? Is that a wager? I think it's got to be like a minus 2,000 for that one. But I still would roll the bones on Knicks not normal. Something weird is going to happen. We don't know what it is. It could be that the entire game plays out, and yet somehow it's still a one-possession game with 5 minutes to go, because of course it is. Because every playoff game in this series, save the last couple of blowouts, have been nail-biters, gut punches, thrilling victories, exhausting, exhilarating, amazing, awful. It's been a roller coaster ride. Like the season itself, it's been not boring. Can we say that? It is not a boring time to be a Knicks fan.
Yes, definitely not boring. And we're going to talk about exactly how not boring it is. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. The first being that the Strickland has an Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We are posting all continued content on that. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. You can find all kinds of cool stuff on there. T-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday at the Prize. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strick and Roll, this pod right here, where I rant and rave about the Knicks and more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And now you get access to Strictly NFL, which, you guessed it, is our news podcast that is about the NFL. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. There's a variety of additional benefits like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so the Knicks are playing a game 7 or a game 6. Sorry,
Six. Yeah. Don't get ahead of yourself, man.
let's hopefully avoid a game 7. We actually have not been subjected to a game 7 in many a year, so I'm hoping to keep that streak alive tonight. They will be in Indiana tonight. That tips off at 8:30. Just an abomination of a tip-off time, but that is neither here nor there.
Ridiculous time to start watching basketball. I hate that. It's like a ludicrously capacious time to start a basketball game.
It's very obvious they did that because this is the only game tonight, so they're just trying to get as many of the West Coast viewers as they can. But it sucks. It's very annoying. Anyway, hopefully that doesn't matter to the Knicks and they can come out victorious. I want to rewind though. You were back in your heyday, a blogger for the.
Am I washed now? Am I past my prime? Yes. Moving on.
But I mean, you started blogging about the Knicks when it was like the Isaiah years, really, right? It's like the late in Isaiah years. I used to follow Knicker Blogger. I was like, that was I was in high school, and so that was like, I was like, wow, this is so cool. You can read about the Knicks on the internet. This is great. And over the years, and I think you would agree to this, that group of, and I don't call them like you guys like there was you, there was Jim Kaman. There's a bunch of guys that started kind of blogging about the Knicks then. They were the first kind of guys to do it. I would say that you blogged at such a time where it became very easy to become jaded and nihilistic about this team. Would you say that, obviously the Carmelo years, they are what they are. Would you say that this group now, obviously Leon Rose comes in with Tom Thibodeau, they add Jalen Brunson, they add all these different players, and now we are where we are. Would you say that this is the first time where you felt, in this last 15, 20 years that are you bought in? Are you back? Are you back?
I'm back. We are so back.
Heartbroken?
We are so back. I'm ready to hurt. We are so back. The funny thing is, I'm old enough that I'm just old enough to where when the Knicks were consistently good in the 90s, a lot of the time I wasn't really diligently watching games. I wasn't watching games every night. It was just other things going on in life, and a lot of them happened to take place during the night. That's weirdly phrased, but I'll let everyone read into that whatever they want. I was working at night. I was working nights. Okay, let's leave it at there. In any case, in the 90s, I was obviously, Starks, Ewing, Mace. I loved all those guys with a passion. But if there was a midweek game against, an extremely mid Denver Nuggets team, I'm not staying up till 9:30 on the East Coast to make sure that I catch that whole game. I would read about it the next day in the papers. And so, the 90s Knicks, the good era, the era where they were, a contender pretty much every year during most of that stretch, or at least you had a more than decent chance that they were going to make it into the conference semis. They were a good team with a well-run organization. I was in and out on those years. There were just times where I stopped paying attention, and then I got suckered back in during the '99 run. That was a very big deal for me. But yeah, if the question is, am I back? Am I ready to be hurt the way I was at the Charles Smith game when I literally put my fist through my parents' drywall? I was so mad about that, and somehow so filled with righteous anger that I didn't break any bones in my hands. I went full Hulk mode and somehow did the most butch thing I've ever done in my entire life, much to the consternation of my parents and the drywall. But yeah, this team is back. I don't understand it fully because kids, let's talk about a little company called CAA. When they announced that they were bringing back Leon Rose, the former head of the basketball division at CAA, it just smacked of all the worst nepotism of the Isaiah years when CAA was everywhere and de facto, in a lot of ways, running the organization. And it went exceedingly badly. I had little hope of Leon Rose being a success. I had little hope of, handpicking as many CAA clients as they could find. Since I even had my doubts about Jalen Brunson just because of all the nepotism. I didn't think it would work. The stories that we heard for the first couple of years of the Rose front office was that there were a lot of different voices that would be heard, that it wasn't exactly the smoothest organizational tree or decision-making process, that was often somewhat chaotic, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't deny the reality, which is that they have built a team that is clearly ready to compete now and exceedingly well positioned for the future. And that is a miracle. Veteran NBA watchers and reporters talk about the Knicks as being one of the smartest teams in the league, which I really thought I would have a better chance of being given a unicorn that poops $100 bills than that happened.
It's a useful unicorn.
Yeah, very, very useful. Very, very more of a unicorn than Kristaps, I'll tell you that. And literally, that was impossible because the Knicks, for pretty much the entire time that I was writing about them, certainly were the laughingstock of the league, and rightfully so. The Knicks were an easy punchline because the jokes fit. They deserve to be like the inflatable, auto dealership clown that gets knocked down and waves around over and over again. They earned that. They wore that red badge like with pride. They were a joke, and not even a good joke. They were just a grim, sad, lost, unfunny joke.
They were like the jokes that the Joker's telling in the Joker.
Yeah, they're the aristocrats. That's what the Knicks were. You list off the Eddie Curry trade. You rattle off like the Jerome James signing. You talk about everything.
That was the same offseason, which was insane.
I know they spent $520 on Jerome James on the basis of one good playoff game that he had with the Sonics, and then Eddie Curry failed a heart test, and the Knicks said, "Yeah, well, we got to get that guy. We got to go get that guy." It doesn't matter that
they waived the medical for that. It was crazy.
They did. They had to accept the fact that he could not pass a physical, and say, "Yeah, no, we'll take him. We got him. No problem." Poor Eddie Curry. If only he liked basketball more. Yeah. But in any case, the point being, a long-winded answer to your question is, yeah, we're back. We're so back. This team is built to win now and in the future. It is being run in capable hands. And for some of our younger viewers now who may not have experienced this, it seems like Dolan is not going to meddle. And that is the most important thing. Like, a good owner will not put a team over the top, but a bad owner in pro sports will absolutely destroy a franchise. I might gesture towards another place that Isaiah might get hired soon enough. Arizona, where Matt Ishibia appears hell-bent on dragging that team down into the clown gutter with him, right?
Yeah, it's done. They already did it.
You know what? So Knicks fans, you see what Ishibia is doing in Phoenix? That was Dolan for a good 20 years. Or 17 years. 17 years.
And I've always thought, like, meddling, not meddling. I've always thought that's like kind of it's almost the wrong terminology. I've always thought
it's a faux piste, as the French would say, a false path.
Yeah, I would say the thing really that he just hired idiots and he empowered idiots. And it's like, he hired Layden. Layden was terrible. And then his response to that was like, let me hire, Isaiah, who was terrible and had no track record of being good at the job. And then
he hired Donnie Walsh, who was good, and he meddled, so Donnie Walsh bailed. And Glenn Grunwald was pretty good.
And then he had like Mills always involved because he just liked Steve Mills, and there was always this weird thing where you were like, are you always just gonna have somebody there? Like, is somebody just in the inner circle?
Yes. Dolan's paranoia he's not been magically cured of that. Dolan's sort of overarching lack of competence, he has not been cured of that. The fact that he does, in fact, do horrible things as a boss, and I would urge everyone to look up his record of union busting with Cablevision, if you'd like to read more about that. That has not changed. But for the moment, he is busy with the Sphere, which is losing billions, and that's got his attention right now. So he's letting Leon Rose do whatever he wants. The Knicks and Leon Rose has brought in enough very qualified and very competent people that they can run things. Like, don't get it twisted. Dolan is still a problem, and that's a bomb that could go off at any moment. But for now, he's not, as they say in Barton Fink, taking an interest in the Knicks.
Yeah, and I mean, it helps that, there's a couple of things that work in his favor. One, the Rangers being really good also helps. So he's got another great revenue source coming in there. The other part is
listen, for all of Dolan's screw-ups and for all of the losing that they did, the Knicks were in fact the worst record in pro basketball from, I think it's 2001 to 20, before the first Randall playoff season.
Yeah, at
the rock bottom. For all of that, the Knicks had always made money.
Oh yeah, they're a cash
made money every year, and a lot of that had to do, unfortunately for Dolan, with bundled cable fees and Cablevision. The fact that they had an in-house cable network, which was a ginormous source of revenue, in addition to the fact that they play in the biggest media market in the country and therefore have the biggest fan base, and play in Madison Square Garden, and the Knicks are an incredibly valuable commodity, and have been and will be, no matter what happens on the court.
Yeah. And I think the other part too, and like this is something I've always thought is kind of like the key to Leon Rose. Why if I'm Dolan, I'm like I'm not worried about anything he's doing. You look at the you go back to like the mid 2000s and you look at their team cap, and they were payrolls back then where they were like double the salary cap, and you're paying a dollar for dollar extra fee on top of that. So like you look at the job Leon's done. Leon hasn't just done a good job. Leon's done a good job and kept it all under very, very reasonable budgetary constraints, which maximizes obviously profitability for Dolan, which he cares about. And that's gonna buy you a lot of leeway with your boss, where you're like, hey, I'm delivering results that you haven't had ever in your ownership.
Yeah, there has not been a sell the team chant, I think, since I think it was 2022 is the last time he was here. Like when they had they had a down year and they brought in Fournier and Walker and it didn't really work, and Randall was terrible, and even
that like terrible year. I mean, they were 37-45. It's not like they were a joke of the league.
They had a mediocre year because they made some poor free agent choices and it didn't work. I understood the logic at the time, though. When I thought the Fournier contract was bad and an overpay when it happened, but I understood it, and I was like, okay, he'll be a valuable, like the 2021 team. If Randall wasn't getting 35 points, they weren't scoring. They were entirely dependent on you. Yeah, they were entirely.
And their offense was bad. I think they were like 23rd that year in offensive rating, so it was not a good offense.
Right. It was a bad offense, and they got by having a really, really good defense. So they need to get more scoring, and I thought, okay. And Kemba came in on the cheap, and he'd had a couple of down years in Boston, and was clearly the arc of his career was heading in a very clear direction, but maybe they could give him a solid year. I understood that too, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, his knees were gone.
Yeah, his knees were shot. That was the end of that. But yeah, Dolan has not been yelled at by a pissed off fan in a while, and hasn't, except for the very weird appearance that he made on Fox 5 News to show pictures of people on the local liquor board and promise that he was having them stalked and things like that. We've gone a number of days without a serious Dolan incident. I cannot stress to you enough, stuff like that in the mid 2000s, throughout the Isaiah years, even into the Walsh years and the early Grunwald years, that stuff happened all the time, and it was awful. And not to sound as paranoid as Dolan, but it could happen again. The man is still there. He has not fundamentally changed. That said, it's all been gravy. It's clearly a very well run team, which is all New Yorkers really ever want. I mean, yeah, look, it would be nice to see a championship in your and my lifetime. I would say the majority of Knicks fans were not around, and certainly weren't fans the last time they actually won one. But what we all clamored for, at least when I was blogging about the Knicks significantly and I was writing about these things, all we wanted was a team that wouldn't be an embarrassment to root for. That was like, okay, they put forth an honest effort. They made these moves. They played this way. They hired this coach. They ran this strategy, and that it all made sense. That's all we wanted. And we've got that in spades.
Yeah. And I think, to touch on that, like one of the things that I've thought is really cool about this team is, again, I not to harp on it, but like the Carmelo years, again, they were what they were. They made 3 straight they had 3 straight playoff seasons. They won a playoff series. But it never felt, at least, maybe in that time, I do think in that 2012-13 season, you thought in this one season, okay, maybe we've got a shot. But there was nothing really that.
I kind of thought they could. I kind of thought they could take Miami to Game 7. Yeah. They were uniquely built to give Miami fits.
It was a weird thing, but like there was never any sustainability to that. There was never any longevity to it, and for whatever reason, as fun as that year was, I don't really feel like that team resonated. I mean, it resonated because you were like, "Holy shit! It feels so good to have a good Knicks team for the first time in forever." But it doesn't. It never resonated with, I think, generations of fans, because there's always that weird thing with the Melo stuff where like a lot of older fans were always like, I'm not into this whole thing. And I think this team and this front office and the organization the way it is, and also like the Tibbs of it all, because Tibbs is one of those 90s coaches that was on the bench with Van Gundy. It feels like there's this kind of direct line from the success of these 90s teams and to this Knicks team, to what it has become. And it just feels like, and then you go watch these games and you're seeing Starks and Marbury together on the baseline. You see Ewing there with LJ.
Tim Thomas is there. I really thought Tim Thomas was going to be. I've had faith in Tim Thomas.
Yeah, and you're just seeing like it really feels like whatever happens this year, if they win tonight, if they win in game 7,
it feels cathartic. It feels like all of those hours and days and months and years that all of us spent rooting for terrible teams, that this is the payoff we get. That this is basically the fundamental compact of sports. Yes, you are going to root for teams that make you not just miserable, but feel bad about yourself for having invested any emotional currency in them. Maybe I'm projecting a let me first person that I rooted for teams.
So I have a lot of trauma in my life from sports.
Right. It makes me feel like stupid. Like, why would you possibly give away part of your emotional well-being to these group of people who clearly, one, they don't know you exist, and by the way they're playing, they don't really care how you feel one way or another. And it just it makes me feel like foolish for ever, investing in them. And this, though, is like, oh, okay, that's why I did that. Because I think it's different. If you can say, oh, I remember the 2003 Keith Van Horn, Tim Thomas trade, and here's why I thought that was going to be an awesome deal for New York that might put the Marbury team over the top. And then, there aren't a lot of people who hold on to those details. Good for them. But now when you see a 6'10" dude on the sideline rooting for that team too, it goes, oh, okay, we're all in this together. This means something. It is all completely meaningless, to be clear, but within this construct, this all has it gives it a sense of weight and time that it makes it feel, it's validating in a way that can't specifically be quantified by wins and losses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think
you want it. By the way, I have some free advice for James Dolan. I know he's a fan of the pod. So Jimmy, can I call you Jimmy? Jimmy, Guitar Jimmy. I know I've said some very mean things about you in the past, and I don't apologize for any of them. But let me offer this. Here's what you can do. Would you like to be beloved by New York City forever? Yes, you clearly would. We may not win a title this year. They may not win a title next year. They may not win a title with this team. That's okay. Let's say things go wrong tonight, goes to a game 7. Or, knock on wood, first home game, game 3 against Boston. You bring to the Garden to sit with all those guys? I think you know the answer, Shwin. It's Charles Oakley.
I can't do the Oakley thing because I can't do it after all the stuff he said about Ewing. I just can't do it. I
don't. Yes, it's the right of return, man. All is forgiven.
All
coming home. You can't, but you can agree that Knicks fans would go absolutely ballistic if Oak was there.
See, so my what I actually wonder about that is, I wonder if
Oak will never do it, so it doesn't matter, and Dolan will never do it, so it doesn't matter.
I think Dolan would do it if Oak was like. I don't think Oakley is cool with Ewing, so I just don't think it's even like it's just not a thing right now. I can't believe those guys.
I want to bring our most cantankerous uncle back home, back into the warm and loving embrace of MSG.
I totally get that. I just find like that. I can't. I after the Ewing stuff, I'm just like, look, man, you do you, and best of luck with all of your endeavors, but I just can't bother to spend too much of my emotional capital on Charles Oakley. But
I can forgive all kinds of sins. I'm just saying, okay, but objectively, you can recognize that if Oak were to be on the sidelines, MSG would go ballistic. The roof would pop off that place.
It's because because the inherent kind of assumption there would be that not only is he now not only is whatever gone on with Dolan water under the bridge, but also now him and Ewing him and Pat are cool. Everything's patched up. Everything's good. So of course it would be an amazing moment.
Also, it'd be nice to have him, so maybe they could give him 5 to 10 minutes as a backup.
Go in there.
That would be nice.
Push around Pascal Siakam for a few minutes.
Grab some rebounds and throw an elbow at Miles Turner while you're at it. For old time's sake.
So going to we've talked a lot about kind of the history here, but this current team, they're obviously in a game 6 tonight. Throughout this playoffs, they've kind of, these games have been crazy topsy-turvy. This series itself has had some major swings. Obviously, they win the first 2 games. Game 1 with some controversy. Game 3, they are on the brink of going up 3-0. They're not able to close that down the stretch. And then game 4, they get blown out. And it kind of feels like, that game 4 was distressing, not because I don't want to say just because they got blown out. It was because it really looked like a team where you're like, this might have been like one injury too many.
The tank's on empty. Yeah. It's the tank is empty and they just do not have enough bodies left. That was my thought. After game 4, my thought was, okay, they have worked their asses off. They have ground themselves down to the nubbin getting this far. They have lost too many rotation pieces. If they lose to the Pacers, if they can't win 2 out of the next 3, I get it. It would have been great to get to the conference finals, but to me, it would still be a wildly success. Like, look, no matter what happens in the next two games or one game, this has been a ginormously successful year for the New York Knicks. Full stop. Period. No caveats. Nothing. The outcome of this series would not and will not change that. But like you, I absolutely thought after game 4, I was sort of emotionally steeling myself for them to get like, okay, you know what? If they can do it, great. If not, it's not going to kill me. We've had so many amazing moments in these playoffs already and in the regular season. I feel like I've gotten a very good return on my fandom dollar for this year that I've spent. So it feels good to me. But I think on a bit of a downer note, I think they got to win this one.
Yeah, the quick turnaround
for let it go to 7. The quick turnaround is what really scares me. The 3:30 start time.
So after game 4, I was actually like obviously I was not like, oh man, this is awesome, but I was still pretty cautiously optimistic because I thought he came out in that second half. They started Deuce McBride, which I thought they should have been doing anyway. Yes. And then he let Deuce.
Listen, I get the decision to start. Precious.
Yeah, I get it.
At the beginning, I get it. If you're looking at the match, at the 5-man, the player data, and especially the 5-man player data against the Pacers, you have to go back to that February game, early February 1st, I think it was. It was right after Julius got hurt, and I think OG was missing his second game, and suddenly they're like, oh, what are they going to do? And they did manage to have, they dominate. I think Hartenstein, Hart, and Achua all finished with double-digit rebounding. I think Achua had 15. I think Hart had a big number. I know it
was their biggest rebounding game of the season until game 5.
Right. They dominated the offensive boards. They could not hit a 3 to save their lives. I think they missed 17 in a row at one point during that game.
It was a brutal game.
And once the shots started falling, the possession battle turned everything in their favor, and they ended up winning. And so I get, honestly, if you're going to use that game and say, all right, our spacing is going to be cramped. It's going to be easier for them to double Jalen. But the most important thing is winning the possession battle and winning the battle on the glass, and Precious helps us do that. Also, Pascal Siakam has really, in the first 3 games at least, was having a lot less difficulty scoring over Josh Hart, and you figure we need to get a bigger defender on Precious Achua. Like, the logic of starting him makes sense. But the fact that he switched gears at halftime is very important. And of course, starting him at the beginning of Game 5 was it. Not to go all Chris Russo, not to go all Mike Francesa, but it was the right move, dog. He had no choice. He had to do
it. Yeah, and I think like what again, which made me optimistic about it is I was like, all right, well, I didn't agree with him starting Precious. I thought it was a mistake for him to do it in Game 3, and I thought it was a mistake for him to do it to double down on it in Game 4. But the fact that he switched up gears in the middle of Game 4, I was like, okay, that is a positive sign. I like that he left.
They've gotten aside from I think Game 1 and I think Game 3 against Philly. I forget what the other good Miles McBride was. Game 1 is the game he had an awesome.
He had Game 1. He had a really good Game 3 or 4 or whatever.
3 or 4, right?
I think aside from that, he had a good Game 5, but then they obviously blow that at the end of the series.
Right. But Precious Miles McBride has not been able to keep TJ McConnell out of the lane. Nor has he been able to discern where TJ McConnell was on January 6th, which I think is really the most important question. And so I can understand the hesitance in starting it because there wasn't a body of evidence that said, okay, he's the one who's going to tie this whole lineup back together. But that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
even if the larger lineup data said the small bean Knicks lineup of essentially 4 guards and Hartenstein is something like plus 33 over the course of the regular season.
I actually had the numbers. If you combine regular season and playoffs, McBride and Brunson, at least those two together, they've been on the floor for 664 minutes. They are a plus 11.52 net rating. That's 124.1 offensive rating, 112.5 defensive rating. They've been lights out. If you look at the full lineup, I can pull that up real quick. So that's with and Hartenstein. That lineup has played. 1 second. It has played. Here we are. 200 minutes now between regular season and playoffs. They are a net 26.7 plus 26.7. They have 138.6 offensive rating and a 112 defensive rating. Great.
And there was a great video from Knicks Film School that they posted on Twitter on Wednesday after Game 5, showing breaking down the game for one. But there's one of the clips is just Miles McBride face guarding Halliburton, and I don't know if the injuries were bothering Halliburton, and that's why he was so off in Game 5. But I think Precious Achiuwa's defense played a huge role in why he wasn't able to get off. He was just stopping him from getting the ball, and that's the thing. The Pacers' offense, which was phenomenal this year, it's still, I think,
it's number 1 in the playoffs right now.
Number 1 in the playoffs, and it was the second best offensive rating in NBA history. I think I think they fell off. They were ahead of the Kings last.
But I think they finished second in the league. I think they're like 120.6 offensive.
Yeah. It's one of the top offenses in NBA history. But a lot of that success came in the first 8 seconds of the shot clock, and we've seen that in this series when they not just what the buckets that they get in transition, but the buckets they get in semi-transition or delayed transition are often equally deadly, and that transition is almost always started by Halliburton leading the dance, and Miles McBride pressuring him for 94 feet. Really put a cramp in that, and that, to me, was a huge impact for the Knicks.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things too, and actually Fred Katz, he wrote a piece today that dropped in The Athletic about talking about this a little bit, and I had brought this up because one of my biggest problems at the end of Game 3 was that Burks obviously played really well, better than anybody could have expected. But I thought that it was a mistake for him to leave Burks in and take Deuce out, because what he was doing was he was using Burks to set screens for Brunson because they were trying to draw Halliburton into the action, which, one, that's a good idea. My problem with that is Burks and Brunson have zero chemistry doing that. They have no chemistry doing it, and Burks is not a particularly good screen setter, and he's not used to it. So it wasn't effective. I liked the idea. I didn't like the execution of it. And if you actually go back and watch the end of that game, which I don't know why you would, but if you wanted to torture yourself and do that, you can see once they did bring Deuce back in, they were actually getting quality shots. They just didn't make any of them down the stretch.
No.
And so and in the piece, Fred Katz, he talks about it. He shows examples of when kind of they first started playing together in February, right? Because before the trade they weren't playing together, and after the trade they still weren't playing together very much until they
Yeah, I
had
think the first time they ran I think that Indiana game was the first time they played like McBride and Brunson together in the backcourt, and this is something that I don't know. I haven't read the article yet, so I don't know if Fred mentioned it, but I distinctly remember, like in that February 1st Indiana game, there's a moment where they're trying it, and Brunson and McBride literally like
that's the example he used.
They pull a Three Stooges and they run into each other, but they figured it out. Yeah,
and I think like what we're kind of seeing, and look, I get it. Like Tibbs is a guy that he kind of learned his craft growing up in that 90s era. And he's always going to believe in the value of like, I want to have my power forward. I want to have my center. I want to own the possession battle. I want to have that size. I want to protect the paint. And I understand all that and I respect it. But I think we're kind of like, he's had to just, it's like challenging his brain he's just like, look, I just got to play these 4 midgets and Hartenstein because it just works. It just works. Like it's what it is. And
I think we cannot discount how much Tibbs has grown as a coach over the last 3 years. We really can't. Like there were adjustments. If we all think back to that Atlanta series in 2021, there were adjustments that could have been made there after the first 2 games. But Tibbs
I mean, he had a little more limited personnel, but I agree. He did not really like push the boundaries of what he was trying to do.
He has this year. Look, there's this perception of Tibbs as an old school coach, which he is, who is so set in his ways that he won't change for anyone come hell or high water. And I think this year has shown that that's just not the case, that he's been willing to adapt, that if something isn't working that he feels should work, he goes away from it. He tries other things. Like before this year, I think if someone told you that the Knicks starting lineup for a crucial playoff game in the year of our Lord 2024 would be guys who are 6'4", 6'4", 6'2", and 6'1", and a center in a Tom Thibodeau team, they would have looked at you like you're a little off your rocker, because that should not be. But again, the reality can't be ignored. And the reality is they built, and this is something that I think Fred has written about and other people have too, but I think it's worth highlighting. They have, starting from when Randall and then Anunoby went down, they built like they've incorporated elements of the triangle again. They are pulling out elements of the offense that Tibbs ran with the Bulls in 2011 using Joakim Noah. In fact, there's a great tweet from Jared Dubin from this year, which is Tom Thibodeau, I'm paraphrasing, Tom Thibodeau is living out his dream by building a better version of the 2011 Bulls, which is in fact accurate. That's what he's doing. But he has been able to adapt, and it's like, okay, Isaiah Hartenstein, you are Joakim Noah, and you are going to be the hub of this offense, and everything that we do is going to run through you. But we are going to set 1,000,000 screens. We are going to move off the ball. We are going to cut with precision and with purpose, and we are going to build an aesthetically pleasing, motion offense. And that didn't exist as of December. Granted, with Mitch Robinson at center and with Julius Randle playing, it's a little bit harder to do. But over the course of this year, he changed the way this team plays on numerous occasions. And that to me is also just, I said, there's a couple of reports out that Thibodeau is going to get, a $10 million a year extension, and good, because he has done an outstanding job, and in ways that I don't think anyone would have been able to predict. If you had said to him, okay, we will get you your perfect team. We will get you the rim protecting center. We will get you the bruising power forward. We will get you a couple of shot making wings, and we will get you a pass first point guard, and you will run offense. You will run a slow paced, incredibly conservative offense. I think he would have been happy with that, but that's not necessarily what they've done here. I mean, they're still, yes, pace is still slow, but this team will attack in transition, and they're actually very good in transition when they do get
They've been really effective. They've been really effective. Yeah. And I think, part of the willingness to it's always like a two-way street, right? Because coaches they're going to trust their gut instinct over anything else. But where I think he's grown, and I think part of this is to do with look, Leon stood by him, obviously, early last season when it
I
felt
would
like
I would like to know how close he got to being fired.
yeah, and look, we obviously won't ever know for sure, but
No.
Leon did stand by him, and if you look at the decisions he's made since then, I mean, so like they're 10-13 last year, and his move is like, you know what? I love you, Derrick Rose. You're done. Evan Fournier, please sit on the bench. Cam Reddish, I never liked you, and now I get to bench you. I love this.
Yeah.
And he picked his guys, and he went with that 9-man rotation, and that saved the season. But like, you look at what he's doing this year, and to like, I don't know that the 2020, his first year with the Knicks, 2020, 2021 version of Tom Thibodeau would have trusted the data, would have rolled the dice and been like, you know what? I don't care that Josh Hart is 6'4". He's just got to start at power forward right now because that's what we need and that's what works best. But I think when he knows now, like he's got that trust from the top down, he knows that Leon Rose will back him and he feels empowered within the organization. I think it's easier to take on board advice. I think it's easier to, hey, the nerds are telling me this thing is good.
Or take risks or try something that they hadn't done before. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that can't be discounted either.
Yeah. And I just think like it's all of the stuff that we're talking about, all of these things, like it just goes to kind of the point of like, this is now an organization, again, whether they win or lose this series and, whatever happens with the Knicks will always become, a crazy dramatized thing. But like, I think you can feel very good about just like their processes, how things are set up in-house, the way, things are traveling up and traveling down the organization. It's tied together and it's cohesive. And I mean, you couldn't even say that even when the Knicks were like good in the 90s, you couldn't say that because there was always this internal squabbling going around. So,
that's what Riley, I mean, the genius of what Riley did during those years is that and you can get this for everyone who hasn't, go read Chris Herring's Blood in the Garden.
It's awesome.
He does an excellent job of detailing this. It's like what Pat Riley did is that there was, again, the dealings with it was Gulf and Western who was owning the Knicks at that time? I think it was.
The ownership situation was just always so weird.
It was Charles Dolan had just taken over, and it was before he let Jim Dolan actually run the day-to-day, and there was all these fluctuations and stuff. There were power struggles within the general manager's office between Checketts and then between Checketts and Grunfeld and all these people. But
and it all comes to a head in '99 too, which is like the most ridiculous part of it all.
The crazy thing about it. But what Riley did is he said, okay, whatever happens in Tarrytown, whatever happens on this practice floor, whatever happens in this locker room, whatever happens in this arena, that is us. And that's like, we control that. The stuff on the outside, I will handle. And I will take whatever heat comes and I will fight. And, eventually he couldn't. And he said, like, listen, I can't handle all of these different factions lobbying for power and do my job. So put me in charge or I'm out of here. And the Knicks chose out of here. But what he did while they were playing was to say that this is for us. This is our space. This is the team space. None of that gets in here. And that's why they were able to succeed to the degree that they were, to a large part. I mean, I hate Pat Riley, and I hope he rots in hell. But I will give him credit where credit is due.
Yeah, and I think like, and I actually believe this. I think this is like, to your point, Leon Rose, like he had not done the job before. So while I think there were even when he first took over, I loved that first offseason they had because he didn't jump in and start throwing dollars around. Like they were very prudent with the way they spent their money.
Okay. As a thought experiment, if Durant had decided to come to New York and said, "I'm bringing Kyrie with me," you don't think he would have?
I mean, I don't know if he would have. I mean, and if he did at that time, he didn't have that option. Though. He hadn't taken over, but he took over after that. Because the 2019 offseason,
I thought he took over right before the 29 offseason began.
He took over. He took over right before COVID, which was during the 2019-20 season. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Everything in the last 5 COVID years. I actually have more clarity about like what happened in the 97 playoff series against Miami than what happened in like the year before and the first year of COVID. So apologies out there, Knicks fans.
No, but I liked some of all those things. But I think, you talked about the Fournier thing. if you go back, like now looking at this team, you're like, all right, everybody in this team is like a bunch of dudes that Tom Thibodeau would love. But you kind of go back to that offseason. So after their first season, they make the playoffs, whatever. They lose to Atlanta, but it's a good season. And it's like, all right, how do we take the next step? I don't like their three biggest moves that they made to bring outside talent in was signing Kemba, signing Evan Fournier, and then trading for Cam Reddish. I don't think you could design three guys in a lab who are more antithetical to like everything Tom Thibodeau feels about the sport than them. And I think that was a valuable. I think that like, look, sometimes you learn from failures. And I think that experience of like everything, and that season was miserable. There was a lot of terrible things that happened. But like, I think that experience is one that has helped kind of this organization and Leon understand, okay, who is my coach? What does he need? If I'm backing him, if I support him.
I think they weren't sure that they were keeping Tom Thibodeau long-term at that point. I think the reason for those moves, and I have no sources, I have no insider info, I am just guessing. Because the general consensus with Tom Thibodeau prior to this stint with the Knicks was that, okay, you want to shape up your organization and install a winning culture, you hire Tom Thibodeau for 3 years. But he's got an expiration date attached to it.
He had like the Skiles reputation, kind of.
Right. He's going to be your drill sergeant. He's going to whip these guys into shape. He's going to make them competitive every night. He will probably even get them to the playoffs, but there is a built-in limit because he's going to overplay guys. He's going to run them ragged during practice. He's going to treat them badly. They're going to get pissed off at all the demands he makes, and you're going to have to bring in someone to get you to the next level. Thibodeau, I think, was seen when he was hired, and I'm sure, again, Leon Rose would deny this to his dying breath. He was the guy before the guy. He was hired. He was the janitor, is I think how you should look at it. He was just hired to come in and clean out all the trash and get things back in reasonable working order before they hired a real contractor to come in to make it look pretty and actually good. So that, to me, explains why they didn't necessarily go with players who would fit a Tom Thibodeau run team in a few of their moves. And again, I am just guessing, but if you injected Leon Rose with True Serum, I think he might say I'm not wrong.
Yeah, and I think there was like, there was like a reporting about the various, voices, and they add Gerson Rosas to the front office. So now you've got this new voice coming in. I think there was a lot of like Leon trying to figure out who do I listen to, who do I listen to in what situations, who has the right idea, who doesn't.
When Worldwide Wes is banging his fist on the table demanding that you take Emmanuel quickly, you listen to him. That's the voice you listen to then. Reportedly, per Ron Weitzman.
Right. So I think it's like that was all like a feeling out process. But now it does feel like, okay, he's come through those first couple of years, whatever, and now he's kind of like settled on, okay, these are the guys I listen to. This person has this strength. This person has that strength. I can trust him for this. I can trust him for that. And this is how we're going to manage everything. And I think, the other part that I think was, and, this goes back to like the really kind of frustrating part of the excesses of spending during the idiot years of the Dolan era, was like, sure, you're spending all this money on playing talent, and a lot of these guys are redundant or not good at all. But like
getting Steve Francis when you already have Jamal Crawford and Stephon Marbury, none of whom Larry Brown wants on the roster at all.
So like all of like that's fine and okay, but like why don't you spend your money on these uncapped areas of the league where you can really gain an edge? And if you look at all the spending that he did, like I think they have the biggest analytic support staff in the league on the coaching staff. Yep. They installed and Tibbs has talked about this very specifically. They've, installed all this tracking stuff in the practice facility so they can track exactly what guys are shooting in practice.
And they used it when McBride, like he said now for a good year and a half that McBride's been one of their best shooters in practice, and that it just hasn't translated during games. Of course, it has translated in Westchester when McBride was sent down to the D League. But Tibbs insisted, like, he has been one of our best shooters. You will see it on court. And we did. And McBride was been a 40% shooter the entire season.
And hopefully we see it again tonight. That'd be great.
Yeah, we need another good Deuce game. That's what they need to win tonight. They need a normal Jalen game and 2 out of their 5 junkyard dogs to pop. And then I think they get the win.
Yeah, I think they will. I feel as confident as I could possibly feel about a road game 6. I think they will get it done tonight. But like, I just think like you're seeing a lot of the early investments and early learning kind of process it or
one other thing. One other thing
to
I'd like
pay
to
off here.
highlight, which was not a Tom Thibodeau reputation that he had coming into this tenure with New York. I don't think you can, in the last 4 years, name a team, maybe Oklahoma City, that has done a better job of developing young talent.
Yeah, and I've always thought Tibbs is underrated as a developer of talent. Like, I think his track record was always good, and now now you can't even deny it. Basically every young player they've had, aside from R.J. Barrett, massively improved during their time under Tom Thibodeau.
And RJ did really, really well in his time in Toronto. He just, look, RJ needs.
It didn't happen for him here. It is what it is.
Didn't happen for him here because RJ needs a specific set. He can play in certain types of offenses, and he needs a very specific role, which you can say 95% of the players of the league is that they need to be in a certain offense and a certain type of role to thrive. And because of the other people on the roster, RJ was never going to have that role here. But he goes to Toronto. He's playing in an offense that plays with more tempo, that seeks out more fast break opportunities, that at the time more emphasized cuts, and all of those things played into RJ Barrett's strength. It plays a 5-out offense all of the time, so the paint isn't nearly as clogged. That isn't where the spots that he likes to get to aren't also taken by Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. So yeah, there are a lot of reasons why I bid, but I do think you cannot discredit the fact that he did. He shot, I think, something ridiculous like 58% from the field in Toronto, or something 56% from the field.
It was I could
ludicrous like that. I don't think the fact that he did that from the moment he set foot in Toronto, I don't think you can say, well, it's just the Tim Hortons donuts that really put him over the top.
55% from the field.
55%, ridiculous, ludicrous, and he was finishing at the rim at something like 79% in 0 to 3 feet. But I think you can credit the development. You have to attribute a good chunk of that success to the development that took place in New York. The fact that it didn't happen on the court in New York doesn't alter the fact that he has grown massively as a player from when he entered the league. And I think you have to give the Knicks some credit for that. And Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, no, and look, it's not like they've been blessed with a bunch of high draft picks too. You're talking about, Emmanuel Quickly drafted 25, Grimes drafted 25, McBride 36, Mitchell Robinson, who obviously predates Leon Rose and Tom Thibodeau, he was drafted 36th. The list goes on and on. I mean, even Isaiah Hartenstein is better today than he was when, like, he was good when the Knicks got him, but he's better today than he was. So it's not just draft pick development. It's also like pro players coming in.
White Dante has spent chunks of this season doing a reasonable Klay Thompson imitation. That's insane. That should not have happened. Draymond Green is Josh Hart is like some bizarre fusion of John Starks and Anthony Mason somehow. And I don't think that was necessarily the case coming into this season.
He's doing justice to the number, no doubt about that.
Yeah, he really is. He's playing like a 6'4" Draymond, and without the groin punching and teammate alienating and
just general unsavoriness.
General unsavoriness and awful takes on inside the NBA. Aside from that, he's doing a reasonable, like, mini Draymond imitation. Like that, he has grown as a player. Like every single person. Precious Achiuwa was a throw-in that trade.
Oh God.
And he has his good games, he has his bad games, he has a limited skill set with what he can do, but he is absolutely a viable rotation player in the NBA playoffs. And I don't think you could have said that at the beginning of this year. And so that to me, that's like, look, you sign a superstar free agent, whatever the sport is, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, or, you get a superstar through the transfer portal for you college fans out there. That's great. That's awesome. It's fun to root for a great player. That's a delight. When the Mets traded for Carlos Beltran, I was over the moon because he's Carlos Beltran and he kicks ass. But it felt more important. It had more emotional and sentimental value when David Wright became a superstar, or Jose Reyes became a superstar. Not to get eerily fixated on the underperforming mid-2000s Mets, but that, or having when Pedro Martinez or Max Scherzer comes in, it's great to root for those guys. I loved watching Mad Max. I loved watching Pedro pitch for the Mets, but it's not the same as when Jacob deGrom goes from an infielder who switches to pitching, reaches the majors at age 25, and turns into, for a stretch, the greatest pitcher that baseball has ever seen, in my opinion. That it hits different. And yeah, some of these guys were brought in on trades. Some of them were drafted. Some
they're
of
all
them,
they're all
signed.
To use another baseball, it is kind of like the island of misfit toys over here. Like,
yeah, it's a homegrown thing. The fact that you got to watch them grow, that you got to watch them transform who they are, to expand the boundaries of what they thought is possible, that always is more fulfilling as a fan. That always means more.
Yeah, of course. And I think like I'm last year's team, I love last year's team. They were great, and you felt good about it because you're watching that Game 5 in Cleveland where they close it out, and you've got R.J. Barrett, Quickly, Mitchell Robinson, Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes. That's 5 guys in the rotation there that are like, I think even Deuce might have played in that game. Actually, Grimes then he was injured, but Deuce might have played in that game too. So you had like 5 guys that you drafted, and you're like, wow, this feels great. And
Deuce played 48 minutes in that game. Grimes played 48 minutes in one of those games in the Cleveland series
against Miami. Yeah, against Miami.
Against Miami, he did. Yeah.
But like you
I still have faith in Quentin Grimes. I think he can be a really good 3-and-D wing. It's just
he wanted, I don't know, he clearly was not happy about something, and
it wasn't once they signed DiVincenzo, the writing was on the wall for him. And
well, I just don't think he responded to the challenge very, very well. And I think
he didn't. He didn't.
And so whatever. I mean, that's fine. I think the main point is that when they make that OG trade, I was like a little bit worried because I'm like, look, I can see the logic, I get it, but there's something like you feel like when you start trading out your young guys, and Obi had already gone in the summer.
I love Emmanuel. Look, I'm still a full-time resident, mainly for tax purposes, on Emmanuel Quickly Island. I absolutely think that a near all-star season is in his future, if not an all-star season. I think he's going to be a top 15 point guard in this league. And it hurt losing him because I loved watching him play because he played with so much joy and he was so much fun to watch. And so that hurt. But it was, again, it was the right move, dog.
Yeah, and not just that. It's like the way that these guys play. It's not just that they're good. It's that they play selflessly and they play for each other and they're willing. Yeah. Like, it's not easy to be like, hey, Josh, for like 3 months, Randall is dead and OG might as well be dead. We need you to play the 4. It's easy to just be like, well, Josh should do it. It's a different thing to get that buy-in and have him sacrifice and put his body in the line and play the minutes and all those things.
And Quickly did that, and RJ did that. They both did. There's one question we need to work out here on the pod, and it's important. So I'm sorry to interrupt your flow, but
no.
Who do you think dealt the fart that inspired the team in Game 5?
Oh, I think it's Deuce. Because I think that it was so like I think it was maybe Macri that tweeted out that it was like it wasn't somebody you'd think it was.
It was Winfield said it's a Christian Winfield of the New York Daily News said that it is a rotation player. Right. So it's not any of the guys sitting.
And I think
so
if it was Josh
7
Hart,
guys.
And if it was Josh Hart, he would have just admitted it. Like he would just say it was me. So I don't think it was him. I don't think it was Brunson because I just like that one's just that feels like it would be too convenient to just it just doesn't feel like the right thing.
I don't think it was Dante because I don't think Dante would be clever enough to say something is going wrong with the pipes in here. He doesn't have that kind of quick way. That's what made me think it was Josh Hart, because Josh Hart would come up with that line. Who is the punniest member? Who is the guy who's quick enough to be like, oh, something's wrong with the pipes in here? Which Nick?
Would OG?
Deuce, we rarely heard Deuce speak except to praise God.
Would OG count as a rotation player, even though he's not?
I don't know. We'll have to get Winfield on to really grill him for the details. But
because
I think
I could see OG
the implication that I had No, Ochi is so nice and so polite. He's not going to say, I think it's.
But he's kind of clever when you listen to him. Like he's
a smart guy. Yeah.
He's a little cheeky. He's got a little Brit to him.
I'm working off the assumption it's one of the 7 players who are still upright for the New York Knicks. And I still kind of think it was Josh Hart. I really do. He lives on a diet of Mike and Ike's and Monster Energy drink. Come on. That's going to cause some gas to back up.
He's definitely got a diet. I can say that.
Okay, or it was Hartenstein. Hartenstein. No, it was not Precious. Or Hartenstein. I think like he was carb loading and overdid it, and that's what got him a little gassy.
I can see Hartenstein.
For me, it's either Josh Hart or Isaiah Hartenstein. And it wasn't Drop a Deuce McBride, nor was it Precious Apua or Dante DiVincenzo. Those are my guesses.
There we go.
This is just my excuse to get some bad puns out of the way. Let's go
on. This is actually, I wanted to get back to this. This is to actually talk about basketball for a second. This is from Knicks tape. We got a comment here. Were you all surprised by how healthy Jalen looked in Game 5 after Game 4? I thought we were getting at maximum 60% of JB. I'll be honest. I think
stunned. I was stunned.
I'll say this. I didn't think he was moving that poorly in Game 4. I just thought he didn't have lift on his jumper. So to me, that was more about like fatigue more than injury.
I thought he didn't have lift because he was favoring the injured foot.
So where I just kind of like, and this is just me. So I like, to me, once you're on the floor, I get the guys are playing through injuries, but like once you're on the floor, I'm like, okay, I just have to take it for what it is that you're playing. So I'm assuming you're close to 100% or 90%, whatever it is you're giving. So I'm just judging you on that. And like to me, when I watched him in Game 4, I still felt like he was getting to his spots. I still thought he was getting. I just thought he wasn't finishing. And I thought last year,
but he was missing short a lot. He was leaving a lot of shots on the front of the rim.
And to your point about why I think it's important they win tonight, that was a short turnaround. They played Friday night, and then they played again, whatever it was, like 3 p.m. or whatever on Sunday. So it was like it was a quick turnaround. So I thought it was reasonable for him, and it wasn't just him, right? It was like the entire team was so flat that
I think if they'd managed to keep it, say, at a 5-point deficit at the end of the first quarter, or if it was just 10 at the half, I think they would have mounted a comeback. I think. They had, again, that was the first time in this playoff run, and really the first time in months in the regular season too, that they just got knocked on their ass. They haven't been blown out a lot. I mean, even the games that they've lost towards the end of the regular season, they were close games. And I think getting beat down that bad, and it just felt like Indiana was everywhere. It was like being hit by a swarm of hornets. They just seemed to be moving faster, and whatever happened before the Knicks could blink, another one of them was loading up for an open three. And crazy. I think the shock of getting down that big, that fast, I think it knocked them for a bit of an emotional loop, just because, again, that's not to question their mental fortitude or their toughness or their drive to victory.
Denver yesterday, and Denver's an NBA champion. It happened.
Denver they let go of the rope. Yeah, they just said, nope, not our night. And it's not like, and I think, honestly, the fact that they did look so spry in Game 5, I think part of it can be attributed to the fact that they did not wring every ounce of energy that they had mounting a comeback in Game 4. Josh Hart played. Josh Hart playing 24 minutes is essentially Josh Hart not playing. That was 160% more time on the bench than he'd had the entire playoffs leading up to that game.
And I think Hartenstein got a lot of rest too.
Hartenstein did. Brunson still somehow played 32 minutes, but he got a lot more rest. I think, honestly, if they were going to lose that game, that was how you wanted to lose it.
Yeah, you'd rather
get blown out. Yeah, just take 2 steps back, punt, come back, live to fight another day.
And I also think part of it too is Game 3. I felt like they went into that weekend set kind of thinking we get one, the series is done. This is done. And I think they put a lot. and they
into
put a lot.
getting it in game 3, and when that
They put a
didn't
lot into
happen,
that.
yeah.
It was physically draining. It was emotionally draining. I think it was mentally draining. All those things.
Mhm.
And they just
Yeah,
couldn't
to
dial it
lose
back.
by a fluke Andrew like Nembhard fling from 30
He
feet
made
away.
2
That's gonna
fucking
leave a
more in
mark.
this last game, and I'm like, this guy shot 28% from the non-corners this year, and now he's draining above the break threes. Like, give me a break. Get out of here, Andrew Nembhard. But
I
like,
don't trust those Gonzaga kids. I don't trust Gonzaga players. I have an anti-Gonzaga bias. I was definitely down on Chet Holmgren coming into this year because of my utterly bigoted, stark anti-Gonzaga takes. I really just find, I was like, great program, huzzah, but they're all frauds. Fraudulent. Gonzaga frauds. They're all Dan Dickow.
Jalen Suggs out here though.
Jalen's like they're fraudulent. Fraudulent, I say.
Yeah, I would say, like, I don't know if I was really, though, that surprised by Brunson in game 5. I just thought, like, we saw this last year against Miami where he had a sore foot, and then, like, people were freaking out, and then by the end of the series, he's unguardable. Like, he just figures it out. And so to me, it's like, whenever he has a bad game or a bad couple of games, there's always going to be this, like, is he hurt? Is he tired? Does he need more help?
Beyond the improbability of Jalen Brunson becoming a 1A superstar, thank you for that, Becky Hammond. Beyond that improbability, or beyond all the people who said it, not just Becky Hammond, although she caught the most flack. I have never in my lifetime, and I'm sorry to say, including Patrick Ewing, rooted for a player who I had more confidence in the ability to get it done in the big moments than Jalen.
Just figure it out.
He will find a way. He doesn't know what that way is before he does it. We certainly don't know what that way is before we see it. But I have, in the important moments, at the crucial time when everything is hanging in the balance, I have confidence in Jalen Brunson getting it done, come hell or high water.
And he learns from his mistakes. Like, I think the coolest thing in this playoff, the coolest thing, last year, game 6, it's a 2-point game against Miami. He gets doubled. Josh Hart's wide open at the top of the key. He doesn't trust him and I get why he doesn't trust him, because Josh Hart pump fakes and whatever. He doesn't pass him the ball. He turns the ball over. Turns it over.
Game over.
The game's done.
Yeah.
This year, game 6 at Philly, tie game. He gets doubled, trapped, whatever you.
Soft double. Not even a hard, and it wasn't trapped. It was a soft double, and he just says, "Nope." Josh gets the ball,
and Josh pays it off. And then, like, those things, when you see a player learn from that, and then you actually see how he has learned from it and applies it directly in the game, it gives you so much confidence in him. And that's why, like, I was probably, anytime you tell me, oh, he's going to score 28 points and a half. Yeah. Was I surprised he scored 28 points and a half? Yes, no. Of course I was. But I wasn't that surprised that he had a great game, because I always expect him to bounce back. And, like, that's why, like, at the start of the Philly series, he had those 2 terrible shooting games at the start of the Philly series. And there were a lot of people like, is he struggling with length? Like, what are they going to do? He hasn't had success against Philly. And I remember, I forgot who was, somebody asked me, like, are you worried? And I was like, I was like, I don't know if I've ever had this type of zen about any Knicks player before, but I was like, there's no point in being worried. I was like, there's no point in being worried, because he'll either figure it out or he won't. And I just trust him to figure it out. So that's what it is. Yeah. And, like, that's really all it is with Brunson, where I'm like, anytime he struggles and then these conversations start happening, I'm like, I don't care about them, because he has consistently shown me that every obstacle, everything that you put in front of him, he will eventually figure it out. And then and because he figures it out, he levels up as a player. And it's like, it's kind of, it's an unbelievable thing to watch in real time.
I forget someone who said this last year. Like, this was probably, it may have been after the Miami series, or it may have been after that huge game in Cleveland that Jalen Brunson had towards the end of last year. I mean, we've seen a lot of great games. That was awesome. But that was the first time we saw Jalen Brunson and go, oh, he can do what now? That game for me was like he had a great year to that point already. Better than anyone anticipated, better than I anticipated. And that game made you go, oh, he can do that? He can go punch for punch with Donovan Mitchell and beat him? Oh, okay. And I think it was after that game that people said, yeah, he's having a phenomenal year, but there are other plateaus that he can still reach. He's not done. This isn't the best. This is not Jalen Brunson's peak, what you're seeing right now. There are levels, and he will get there. And I went, oh, really? More? I mean, he's a borderline all-star. He's a 24-6 point guard. He's great. More than this? What? Oh, okay. I'm not sure how. I mean, there are these athletic limitations, and no matter what, he's always going to be this, kind of squatty 6'1" dude. And okay. And yeah, there are levels. So if you said to me, Jalen Brunson, who was starting when the calendar flipped, he was a 30-point a game scorer in the NBA. If you said to me that there's another level he can get to, I believe it.
Yeah,
That he can get better than this. I would absolutely believe it. I don't know how. I don't know what part of his game is going to get better yet. I'll leave that to the Benji Ritholtzes of the world to break it down and tell me. But I would believe it. I believe him. I believe he can do anything, and that's the first time that's happened for a Knicks player in my lifetime.
Well, and I think the other part too. This is where, look, people were laughed at this report kind of when it came out, but there was a report right at the start of the year. I think Fred Katz had it, where he talked about there were people in the organization that felt like as good as Brunson was last year, like they didn't think the Miami series was a fluke. They were like, no, this is what
that may be the article that I'm thinking of, and I may have been thinking it came out after the Cleveland game. It may be the same story, yeah.
And it was like, no, we don't think that was just like he dialed it up for a series. We think he can dial it up like this consistently when we need it. And like there were people that laughed at that. And there are people that were laughing about the idea of Jalen Brunson leading a team at a high level midway through the season, and I'll be completely honest. If you told me at the start of the season, my belief was, I think Jalen Brunson's awesome. I think that he might even be, and I even said this last summer, I was like, I think he can be the best scorer, best lead option on your team, but I don't know that he's like a top 5 player, top 6, 7 player, an MVP candidate level player in the NBA. And then basically by 50, 60 games into the season, I'm like, nope, he's an MVP candidate. Like we have one of those guys now. This is great. Like I haven't had this in forever. I really like this. Let's do more of this. It's, once you have that confidence in your guy, then it just makes...
He has to be the kind of guy, I would guess, again, I'm not plugged in enough to be able to say one way or another about what other NBA players think of Jalen Brunson, but I would think he is the kind of superstar that another star is going to say, yeah, I can make my game work with his and not sacrifice everything in order to cater to his needs. I would have to think he'd be the kind of, Luka Doncic is unreal. He is an unfathomably great, just to pick another heliocentric scorer at random. It has been difficult in Dallas to find him another superstar to play with. And for everything one might want to say about Kyrie Irving, and there are plenty of things that one could say about Kyrie Irving.
He's perfect with Luka.
He is perfect with Luka. And it has taken some deck shuffling to be able to find that guy. My point being, now that the Knicks have said, and they've made it clear from the moment Leon Rose took over that their goal was to find 2 guys who could be the pillars of this team. Just to find a 1A top 5 player, top 10 player superstar. They got that. Check that box off. That is the hardest thing to do in the NBA. Finding a top 10 guy, a guy capable of being the best player on a championship team, is the hardest thing to do in the NBA in 2024 because there just aren't that many.
It's always been. Yeah, it's always been.
Yeah, it's always been. Always. So they got that guy. But with some of those top 10 guys, it is a little bit more difficult to find the guy who slots in, who's the sidekick or the 1B, let's say. Drew Holiday, the perennially underrated Drew Holiday, was perfect for that for Giannis in Milwaukee. I don't know if Dame fits as well, but Drew was perfect. With Luka, it has been difficult. Kyrie Irving has absolutely proven himself to be capable of being that guy who's like, nope, the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun revolve around your sphere, Luka. Not to get into flat Earth theory with Kyrie, but and I will find my spots to come in and be Kyrie Irving dominant ball guy. But this is a long-winded way of saying if another superstar becomes available this summer, I think the Knicks have a lot of possible candidates who would fit very well next to Jalen Brunson. Devin Booker. Excuse me. Got some caught in my throat there. Sorry. Excuse me.
And I also think like when you get to this point, like, and they've proven that they're capable of doing this, like, you have to be picky. You have to be judicious and figure out who the right guy is, because getting from 40 wins to 50 wins, right? Getting from 30 wins to 50 wins, it's not the easy part, but it's easier to do than 50 wins to championship team, because those marginal gains are harder to get. And kind of to the point you were making, I want to read this comment. This is from Nemo Petiter, all the way from beautiful France. JB gives a sense of security in the clutch.
Bonjour Nemo, comment ça va?
JB gives a sense
Allez, les Knicks.
JB gives a sense of security in the clutch I've never felt as a Knicks fan. The exact opposite of when Julius wanted to take charge of plays down the stretch. And I'm just a fan watching. Can't help thinking he boosts his teammates' confidence in those circumstances. Yeah, and yes. I think that's a real thing. Like it's not a coincidence to me that Dante and Hart are playing like the best ball of their careers. And they wouldn't be doing this on any other team, because they wouldn't have no other player in the NBA, no other superstar, and Jalen Brunson at this point is a superstar. No other superstar in the NBA is going to look at Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart and be like, I trust you with everything. I trust you with everything. Yeah. I don't care. Like, Dante went over 6 last game. Did anybody in the world think he had a bad game? Not a single person in the world. I thought he played an awesome game, and he shot like shit.
I think I underestimated how badly a certain segment of New York fans have been dying to root for a pugnacious Italian guy. I think I discounted how important that was. I think the fact that or as I like to call him, Christopher Many-Shooty. Sorry. Apologize. But it's an important thing that to have like a pissed off Italian guy saying forget about it on the court for a certain segment of New Yorkers' identity. I think the fact that, we make fun of the Nova Knicks thing a lot, but that ish works. That works. Like, these guys, not just because of the fact that they personally clearly like each other and like spending time around each other, which is an important thing, but they have but in lieu of, like the Bulls dynasty or the Lakers dynasty or the Celtics dynasty, where the core members of the team were pros together for a period of many, many years, these guys have got hours and hours and hours of time together in practice so that they know each other. And that trust is not just built on, oh, you're awesome, so I know you're going to do the right thing. It's, I know what you're going to do because I've seen it, because we've worked on it, so that it's just muscle memory. I don't have to think where, like, Jalen doesn't have, when he passed to Dante, like when Jalen passed to Hart rather for that shot, there was some muscle memory of what happened in Miami the year before, but he knows, because he's played with Jalen Brunson, like Josh Hart, for many years. He knows where he's going to be there. Yeah. He knows where he's going to be, and he doesn't have to think about it. It's just instinct, and he just does it. And that's, making the right play is not just it's not a moral thing. It's not a choice. It's unconscious. It's based on repetition. Like, the body has its own rules there. And that's what that has been. And, everyone thinks like, okay, they got Jalen's teammates. Isn't that nice? But that's not a good way to build a team. Why would you give like $10 million over 4 years to a guy who's been a solid backup just because he was Jalen Brunson's bud when he was at school? That's dumb. No, it's not. It was actually really, really, really smart. What they did is they fast-tracked many years of team chemistry and shrunk it down into a minuscule time frame.
Yeah, and I actually think, like, I mean, not that this probably was not intentional, and it's kind of like a side effect of just the move they made. But like, I think you see this also with like OG obviously being here. When him and Precious play together, you can see that like they have an understanding. Like that game 4 in Philly where Precious closed down the stretch at the 5, but you could see him and OG had this understanding of like passing off the pick and roll. So like, okay, we're gonna switch this with him and Maxey, and we know exactly how to do that. And I think like there's always value to, and obviously now Hartenstein's been here for a couple of years. You can see how he has that chemistry with these guys, and like they've developed it and they've played a lot of minutes together and all these things. And it's like, there's the one thing I think that is really, really hard in the NBA, and this is the hardest thing I think, and a lot of teams, every team struggles with this, is you want to develop continuity, you want to have chemistry, you want to have those things, but you're also always looking to improve your talent level, improve your team, and balancing those things is tricky. And timing that and understanding when it's okay, when is the time that we've seen what this group looks like, we need to do something to elevate it now to a different level.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing you've got to give Leon Rose a ton of credit for is he hasn't been hasty. The easiest thing in the world for him to have done would have been to trade for Donovan Mitchell. That would have been the easiest thing in the world for him to do.
And I think, look, I think if the price were right, he would have still pulled the trigger. But I think he had.
But that's always been the Knicks' issue, right? It's like it's fine to want Carmelo Anthony. That is like a totally normal thing to want. It is another thing to be like, well, this is our hard line, and it's like, no, we're gonna need one more thing. Okay, fine, we'll give you the one more thing. All right, we're gonna need Mozgov. Fine, we'll give you Mozgov. But it's like it sounded dumb. It sounded very stupid at the time. But to consistently budge on those things, and it's not just that one move; it's all the moves.
You lose enough, you give up away enough at the margins, and eventually the entire foundation crumbles. Is what happens, and they've been smart about it. Look, I remember when the Donovan Mitchell trade fell through, and let's make it this the last one because unfortunately I have regular work to go back to.
No problem. I was very happy when I fell through, by the way.
Yeah. I wasn't very happy, but I was like, okay. When I saw what Utah paid, I was like, okay, good. Pass.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yep. And they've done that. And they still haven't made their big move. They still have not done that. And maybe they don't. Maybe they won't.
Maybe they don't. Maybe they find a way to bring home Mikal Bridges, who's very, very sad now, not being with his friends. And maybe they find a way for getting chest cough to be the fifth star. Or maybe they say, you know what? We'll upgrade. We'll see what happens at the trade deadline next year. But for now, we want to roll with a fully healthy version of this roster and see how far they can go. And that is a you can make the case that unless a star falls into their lap at a cut rate, that might be the best way to go.
Just get me Alex Caruso off our bench, and I'm ready to go to war.
Oh Jesus!
Tom, the Thibodeau.
You tibbed too hard. That's too much tibbing.
Tibbs might never.
Too much. If you have Alex Caruso for more than 4 hours, please seek a doctor. That's
Tibbs is going to be in the hospital if that happens.
Yeah. With some kind of groin injury, I think. All right, Rob. Thanks so much for coming on. Let people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug before you get out of here. Yeah, there's a story that's up now about the Knicks at the Daily Beast, which will reiterate a lot of these points about the Knicks don't need a megastar to win, just good vibes. Can be found at thedailybeast.com. I got another story coming out this either later today or tomorrow at Front Office Sports, and I'll keep it coy about what that's about, but that'll be coming up real soon. Awesome. Robert, thanks again so much for coming on, and appreciate your time. Thanks so much. All right, take care. All right, bye-bye. All right. I am going to stay on. I'll answer some of these questions that we got in here. Okay. I'm going to log off. All right, thank you. Thank you. This is from Jordan Bubb. Do you think the Knicks really need another superstar, just another super role player who can fit with the culture and chemistry on the team, be a good starter when injuries eventually happen, be exceptional on the bench whenever your number is called on both sides of the court? I'll be honest with you, like we were talking about this in our Discord a few weeks ago, maybe even just last week, about, if Donovan Mitchell is available, would you trade Dante for him? And is that worth it? And blah, 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 blah. And at the time I was like, yeah, I still think you listen. I still think you always explore the price of various things. I think you want to understand what the market is on anything, because you never know when a value will fall in your lap. But I'm kind of at the point where I don't think you need to do a whole lot. And I don't think maybe you need to do a whole lot. Maybe you do need to make a big move, but I don't think you can know that for sure, given what we know so far about the team and the fact that we never saw the team fully healthy. I mean, even the Burks piece of it, Burks sprained his shoulder when he got to New York, and he looked like, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody.
you were like, all right, maybe this guy was just putting up bullshit numbers in Detroit because he did shoot really well from the floor or from three this year in Detroit. You're like, all right, maybe this guy was just putting up bullshit there, and now he's playing serious basketball and he can't fit in anymore. But now you look at him, and he's obviously been really big for the Knicks in these last 3 games. And again, that's just another piece of, we never saw Bogdanovich with Randall or any of these things. We never saw that January version of the team. We never saw Mitch with Randall and OG. Like we've never seen that. We never got a chance to see it. So, I do think, I'm not joking when I say it. Like, I think you get Caruso on this team without touching any of the main kind of components. And by main components, I mean the 7 guys in the rotation. If Burks had to go out to get Alex Caruso, I think that is more than fine. If they even bring back Burks, who knows what they'll do with Burks. But like Alex Caruso to me is a guy that you bring him in, Randall comes back healthy, OG's back. That's a team that has a lot of versatility to match up in a lot of ways. You've got defensive stalwarts all across the board. You've got a lot of options. And I just think he's a super valuable player. And like Josh Hart, he's a guy who plays much bigger than his size. So I don't think you need to do anything gigantic with this team. And I think it might even be smart not to. Because at the end of the day, again, no matter how this series breaks down, they've gone. I could not ask more from a team than what this team has given me as a fan, and all of us as fans collectively. I really feel that strongly about it. I just don't think you can ask more from them, no matter how everything shakes out. And as David Goodman posted here, 15-1 with Randall, OG, and Brunson. I wish we got to see all of them in the playoffs. Yeah, man. Hey, there's no doubt about it. When those guys were healthy, they were a problem. And Nemo says here, if they don't have anyone lined up, it would make sense to wait for someone to get disgruntled and to shake the league rosters. Yeah, I mean, we don't know. I mean, this always happens in the NBA, is all of a sudden guys become available out of nowhere that you never expected to be available because somebody had a terrible end of the season or something happened, and whatever happens, everything that can happen will happen type of thing. You never know. So I think that is definitely one of the big questions they have to answer. But for me, I just think that, it's probably the type of, I know Robert was kind of coughing through it, but he was talking about Devin Booker. Devin Booker's probably he's not going to be available this offseason. So whatever. But if you do have interest in him as a long-term target, then yeah, you don't make a big move this offseason. You should not do that. I think if I'm the Knicks, I think you want to use this offseason to really bolster the bench again, and also just replenish your depth, because obviously you've traded out a lot of your young guys. And look, they did get back Precious, and I think they will bring Precious back, which I'm a fan of. I think he's a really, you can do a lot worse for a third center and kind of like your third or fourth power forward option when the team is healthy. So you can do a lot worse than Precious Chua. He's super athletic. I think there's value there. I'm cool with that. But unless I don't know what star would become available this offseason that makes it worth kind of making a big significant move. And I'm not going to lie. I definitely do think that Julius Randle, going back to CAA is not. I feel like that matters. Next tape asks, Game 6 vibe check, keys to the game. I feel I said when Rob was on, I feel as confident as you could possibly feel about going into a road playoff game that in a building. Look, the Knicks have not won a game in Indiana since '99. I'm pretty sure. I can look that up while I'm talking. The last time they won a game in Indiana was Game 5 of the 1999 Eastern Conference Finals. They won that game 101-94. Your starting lineup for that game, if you want to feel old, starting lineup: Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, Larry Johnson, Charlie Ward, Chris Dudley, It's a hilarious box score in many ways. But yeah, I mean, that's the last time they won a playoff game in Indiana. So this has been a house of horrors for the Knicks. They lose in 2000 to the Pacers in 6 games. Granted, that team is in 2000. They were really good. They did play Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals again, but they lost in 6 games. They didn't win a single game in Indiana in that series. They lost game 1, game 2, and game 5 in Indiana. Then they lose game 6 in New York. Obviously, they lose in 2013. They lose all 3 games in Indiana. They lose the closing game in Indiana, game 6, with the infamous Roy Hibbert play, which I don't think any of us needs or wants to relive. So, yeah, I mean, look, you can't feel super confident and great about playing a team, a franchise that has, beaten you the last 2 times you faced off in the playoffs, and you've not gotten a game off them in their building in that time. Obviously the Knicks are still beat up. It is what it is. They've got to find a way to overcome that, and they did do that in game 5. I think they can continue to do that. But yeah, I mean, winning this game would mean a lot to me as a fan. I think it'd be cathartic. I think it would be a nice way to kind of close the loop on that 2013 series, which I still think about. I definitely still think about that because I will forever believe the Knicks were a better team that year. I know, and Mike Woodson, bless his heart, I'm not sure about deciding to start fucking Kenyon Martin to play big. It was not a great pivot in the middle of that series. They had a chance to get to an Eastern Conference Finals that year. They didn't do it. They've got a chance to get to they had a chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They weren't able to do it. They've got a chance to get to Eastern Conference Finals this year. Can they do it? This is a great chance. This is a great opportunity. Obviously, if they were healthy, I mean, shit, if they just had OG with everything else they've got, you'd feel really, really good about their chances about either winning today or game 7 on Sunday. I still feel good about their chances, but it's definitely tricky. And tonight is going to be, it's a massive game. It's a massive moment. They got completely destroyed in game 4. They got ran out of the building in that game. So they've got to find a way to execute. I believe in this team to do that, though. I think they will. I think they can. I have faith in them. So, yes. All right. I think that's going to do it. Thanks for everybody that listened in. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate that. I'm nothing to plug personally, so I will plug all the work at Strickland. Check out the recaps. Obviously, Miranda's doing a great job. Colin, Stacy's chipped in also. So we're getting all variety of contributors there. Check out the podcasts. Check out the rundown. Sam and Tyrese have been holding that down all playoffs long. So shout out to them. And again, thank you to everybody that joined us today. Thank you for the comments. I will no play about tonight, Nemo. Sorry. I can't be watching these games with people watching me. I need to be in my own private hell and suffer in silence. Not in silence, but suffer alone. All right. I will see everybody after the game. I will be on the post game, win or lose. So we'll see y'all then. Have a great rest of your day. Go Knicks. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. Peace.